Absolutely. Here's a completely fresh and highly original opening. No introductions, no background, no slow build-up. Just immediate tension, unique flow, and full compliance with YouTube's rules. Title: She changed the locks. For days later, she was sobbing in a parking lot. Part 1. A key that didn't fit, and a smile that didn't break. The doormat still said, "Welcome home," but the lock didn't agree. I jiggled the key, glanced at the porch light, still flickering like it always did, and twisted harder. Nothing. Cold air bit the back of my neck as I stood there, suitcase in one hand, a crushed granola bar wrapper in the other, and a sinking feeling blooming in my gut. No message. No warning. Until my phone buzzed. I found someone better. That was it. No punctuation. No greeting. Just those 4 words, followed by a photo. Them. Her legs across his lap. A bottle of my bourbon, the one I was saving for our anniversary, half empty on the coffee table. And that couch? My couch. Still had the stain from when I spilled nacho cheese during the playoffs. I never got around to cleaning it. And I never will. I didn't ring the bell. I didn't knock. I didn't yell. I just turned around, walked down the driveway like I was heading to the mailbox, and kept walking. Past my truck. Past the neighbor's motion light. Past the life I thought I still had. I booked the cheapest motel with a working lock and a window that didn't shut all the way. Room 108 smelled like burnt toast and tired dreams. For the next 3 days, I said nothing. To no one. I just listened, not to music or people, but to the way silence stretches in a room where you've got no plans, no answers, and no home. The vending machine ate my last $5 bill, and I just laughed. Laughed so hard it echoed in the plastic ice bucket. But then, on the 4th morning, I opened my phone and saw a video. Not sent to me. No, she'd never be that stupid. Someone else posted it. Someone who didn't realize the guy in the background, looking like he just lost a bet with a bottle of bleach and a spray tan, was him. Her upgrade. Sitting in a booth. Not alone. I leaned in, zoomed, watched. And right there, in high definition, was the first thread of her unraveling. She didn't know I saw it. Not yet. But I smiled again. A different kind of smile this time. Because the locks might have been changed, but she forgot I still had the keys to something else entirely. I watched that video at least 10 times in a row, barely blinking. At first, I wasn't even sure why I kept replaying it. It was a short clip, no more than 15 seconds, probably filmed by someone trying to capture their own moment at that bar. Laughter, clinking glasses, background chatter. Totally innocent, unless you knew what to look for. There, in the corner, barely noticeable behind the girl filming her margarita, was Lorna's new better option. He was wearing a pale pink polo shirt with a popped collar and those obnoxiously white sneakers you only buy when you want attention. He looked completely out of place in that booth, not just because of his outfit, but because he wasn't alone. Sitting across from him was a woman who wasn't Lorna. And they weren't just talking. Her hand was on his thigh. His fingers were grazing her wrist. His smile was the same one I saw in that couch selfie, the smug, careless grin of a man who thought he had everything under control. I paused the video, took a screenshot, and stared. Now, listen, I'm not the type to jump to conclusions. At least, I wasn't. But when someone steals your home, your partner, your peace, and brags about it from your own furniture, you learn to pay attention to the details. The bar's name flashed briefly on the menu in the video. I knew the place. It was a few towns over. Upscale enough for someone trying too hard. I checked their website. Bingo. Thursday night, ladies' cocktails, no cover, open until midnight. I didn't go there. I wasn't interested in confrontation. I had something else in mind. Instead, I went back to the motel and called up a guy I hadn't talked to in years, Dennis. We weren't exactly friends. More like mutually tolerated high school acquaintances. He had a reputation back in the day for being shady, but what people didn't realize was that Dennis had evolved. He ran a freelance tech business now, security cameras, phone recovery, digital tracing. Legal, mostly. Discreet, always. He owed me a favor from way back when I didn't report him for something stupid we both got dragged into. I reminded him of that, gently, and told him what I needed. I'm not asking for dirt, I said. I just want to know who this guy is. Dennis didn't hesitate. Send me a face. So I did. The screenshot. The pink polo. The smug smile. Within a few hours, Dennis had a name. Neil Creighton. Age 35. Works in luxury bathroom remodels, mostly catering to real estate agents and influencer couples who want their bathtubs to look like Roman temples. Not married. No kids. Clean record. Socials full of gym selfies, overpriced whiskey bottles, and captions like "grind don't stop." Exactly the kind of guy who thinks taking another man's wife is an achievement. But then Dinesh dropped something unexpected. You might want to sit down." "I'm already sitting," I said. He sighed. "Well, your wife's new man? He's got another Lorna." "What are you talking about?" "She's not the only one he's dating. There's another woman. Name's Marissa. She posted a photo with him yesterday. Same shirt. Different house." Something twisted in my stomach, not out of jealousy, not anymore. I wasn't even angry at that point. I was stunned. Not by Neil. By Lorna. She changed the locks. Tossed me aside. Declared she had upgraded for this? A guy whose loyalty lasted less than 4 days? It was almost funny. Almost. But what came next turned the tide completely. That night, I received a message from an unknown number. It was short. "You don't know me, but you really need to call me. It's about Lorna." I stared at it, hesitating. It could have been anything. A prank. A trap. A scam. But something told me to dial. And when I did, her name wasn't the first one mentioned. It was his. And the woman on the other end? She was crying. Her voice was trembling, like someone who'd been holding a scream inside for days and finally cracked it open just wide enough to let some of the panic slip through. She said her name was Marissa, the same Marissa Dennis had found on Neil's social media. And before I could even ask how she got my number, she told me. "He gave me your name when he got drunk. Said he replaced you. Said your wife was a project." I didn't say anything. I wasn't sure if I even believed her at first, but she kept talking, and it didn't take long before that sick, spinning feeling returned to the pit of my stomach. "I thought I was the only one," she said. "Until yesterday. He was in the shower. I opened his phone. He left it unlocked. I don't know why. Maybe he didn't care. Maybe he thought I'd never look. But I did." What she found was worse than I expected. Neil hadn't just moved in on my life. He built a little empire of deception. Lorna wasn't the only woman. There were 5 others. All of them in different towns. All of them with keys to apartments that weren't really his. He rotated between them like clockwork. But Lorna? She was the only one who had kicked her husband out. The only one who burned her bridge without checking what was on the other side. "He's a manipulator," Marissa said. "He has this way of making you feel like you're his whole world. Like he's this broken man who just needs someone to believe in him. But the second you do, he pulls the rug out. Starts disappearing. Gaslighting. I should have left months ago." I leaned forward in the motel chair, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. It all felt too surreal. I didn't even know this woman, and somehow she knew exactly how to describe what I'd seen in that photo, the fake comfort, the smug triumph, the emotional sleight of hand Neil used to make people like Lorna think they were special. But then she said something I didn't expect. "I'm not just calling to warn you," she said. "I'm calling because I think your wife's in trouble." That stopped me. What kind of trouble? She transferred money to him. How much? I don't know exactly, but it was a lot. I saw a text. "She sent a wire from one of your accounts." He told her it was for an investment in his new business. But Wallace, there is no business. He did the same thing to a woman named Tessa last year. Took her savings and vanished for 3 months. I froze. I hadn't even thought about the accounts yet. I'd been so fixated on the betrayal that I forgot the very real possibility that Lorna still had access to our joint savings, the one I'd been adding to for almost a decade. The one we were supposed to use for the down payment on a small property in Wisconsin. Our supposed retirement dream. Without another word, I hung up. I didn't mean to be rude. I just needed to act. I pulled up the bank app, typed in my login, waited for the loading screen to stop spinning. When it did, I felt my stomach hit the floor. The account was nearly empty. Gone. Drained. Like it had never existed. She'd done it. While I was sleeping under flickering motel lights, she had wired the money, my money, to that grinning parasite wearing my old pajamas. And suddenly, it wasn't about heartbreak anymore. It wasn't even about betrayal. It was about theft. Lorna hadn't just thrown me out. She'd used me like an ATM on her way into someone else's bed. And whether she knew it or not, she was about to find out just how fast illusions can burn. Because the version of me she kicked out? That man was broken. Numb. Pathetic. But the man standing in that motel room now, tired, furious, clear-eyed, he was someone else entirely. And he had a plan. I didn't sleep that night. My motel room had turned into a war room, half-lit, silent except for the occasional wheeze of the heater and the soft tap of my thumb scrolling through bank statements. Every click felt like a punch to the chest. It wasn't just the joint account. She had dipped into my pension too. My retirement fund. The one I had carefully grown for years, because Lorna said she never wanted us to depend on anyone else. Turns out, I should have been more worried about her than anyone else. The wire transfer happened the same day I landed, before she texted me, before the lock was changed, before the photo of her and Neil on the couch. It wasn't an emotional whim. It wasn't some spontaneous betrayal. It was planned. The whole thing. I sat there, staring at the timeline like it was a murder scene. Because in a way, it was. Not of my body, but of my trust, my years, my belief in the version of reality we'd lived inside together. And now that reality had been carved open, emptied out, and sold off, I kept going. Pulled the rest of the bank history. She'd been slowly moving small amounts over the last 3 weeks. Quietly. Nothing that would trigger an alert. $50 here. 100 there. Then, suddenly, 10,000. And another 5. Then everything. Gone. But I'm not stupid. Years ago, before the pipeline job, I worked security for a private warehouse, one of those quiet companies that rent space to people with more money than questions. We weren't just trained to spot suspicious behavior. We learned how to document, how to track digital footprints, how to log without being seen. So I started doing exactly that. Step 1. Secure the evidence. I screen recorded the bank activity. Every login. Every transaction. I downloaded high-res copies of her messages, the selfie, Neil's profile. I printed screenshots and timestamped everything. I organized it into folders and backed them up in cloud storage under a different name, something Lorna would never recognize. Then I called the bank. It was a long shot, but I explained what happened. They froze the account temporarily, pending review, but they couldn't reverse the wire transfer yet. Still, they flagged Neil's name, and that was enough to give me a sliver of leverage. But here's the twist. I wasn't calling lawyers yet. No. I needed her to feel it first. I needed her to realize that the man she threw her life into, the one she gave my savings to, wasn't just a fraud. He was a fuse. And she had lit it with both hands, smiling the whole way. And then, as if summoned by the sheer weight of the storm brewing around her, she finally messaged me. No apology. No regret. Just this. Can you come by Sunday morning? I boxed up your stuff. It's in the garage. My hands went cold. She wanted me to show up like some delivery guy picking up scraps from the life she stole? She wanted me to walk through the ruins of our home and pretend none of it mattered? Fine. Let her think I was still the broken version of myself. Let her think I'd show up quiet, weak, humiliated. But I wasn't coming to collect clothes. I was coming to collect truth. So I replied, sure. Sunday works. And then I called Dennis. I needed eyes. I needed ears. I needed everything recorded. Because Sunday morning was going to be the first time Lorna saw the look on my face, not the one I wore when she locked me out, not the one from her message thread. No. This time, she'd see the one I'd saved just for her. And behind it? Everything was already burning. Sunday morning came in gray and bitter, the kind of overcast that makes everything look faded, like even the sky didn't want to be involved in what was about to happen. I didn't sleep the night before. Not really. I just laid there in that stiff motel bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, playing out every possible version of what could happen in my head. Would she be smug? Cold? Fake an apology? Or just try to get rid of me as quickly as possible? Honestly, I didn't care. I wasn't going for closure. I wasn't going to beg or shout or grab back what was mine. That man was long gone. I had something better, truth. And I planned to drop it in her lap like a live wire. I pulled up in front of the house at 10:02 a.m. I parked in the street, like a stranger. Not in the driveway. Not where I used to. The house looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. My name was still on the deed, but that building wasn't home anymore. It was a stage, and the curtains were about to rise. The garage door was already open, just like she said it would be. There were 3 boxes near the front corner, lazily taped shut. One was half collapsed. My name, written in black Sharpie, had been scrawled across the top like I was a piece of abandoned mail. She stepped out from the side door a moment later, holding a mug, wearing one of my old flannel shirts. That part hit me. I won't lie. She kept the shirt, my favorite one, but not the man who wore it. Her hair was messy like she just rolled out of bed, which I'm sure she did, probably from the sheets I paid for. Her expression was casual, almost bored, like this was some polite exchange between neighbors. Hey, she said, taking a sip from the mug. I didn't know if you were actually gonna come. I nodded once. No smile. She gestured at the boxes. There's your stuff. I didn't know what mattered and what didn't. So I just threw in whatever was left. You emptied our accounts, I said flatly. Her eyes flickered. Just a moment. Just enough. I had to secure a future for myself, she replied, too quickly. You wouldn't have let me have what I deserved if I asked. What she deserved. I clenched my jaw, breathed in through my nose, and smiled, but not kindly. You sent 10,000 to Neil. Did you know that wasn't his real name? The mug stopped halfway to her mouth. What? Neil Creighton? Not who you think he is. Not even close. His name's actually Blake Kessler. Used to run real estate cons down in Florida before he got chased out. He's got 4 different IDs. 5 girlfriends. You're number 6. Well, I paused. 7, technically. One of them's pregnant. I watched the color drain from her face like someone pulled the plug on her bloodstream. That's not possible, she muttered. You're lying. No, Lorna. I'm done lying. That's what I've been doing for years, pretending things were fine when they weren't, ignoring the signs, swallowing the silence every time you looked at me like I was an obligation. But I've been wide awake since the moment you changed those locks. She didn't respond. I let it hang in the air. I spoke to Marissa, and Tessa, and his ex from St. Louis. He's done this before. He grooms women who are tired of stability. You handed him my savings and thought you won. But he played you. She blinked fast. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. I reached into the folder I brought and handed her the printed screenshots, bank transfers, photos of Blake with other women, comments from Marissa's account, timelines. Everything cross-referenced and highlighted. Her hands trembled as she took them. Her eyes darted across the pages like they were burning her skin. But it's too late, I said. The money's gone. And I've already filed a report. Financial fraud. Joint account. Police said it might take months, but they're interested. Especially in Blake/Neil/whatever his name is. She sat down on the step between the garage and the house, the folder resting in her lap, her mouth open like she couldn't figure out which sentence to say first. I didn't offer comfort. Not anymore. And then, just like that, the last thread unraveled. Her phone buzzed. She looked at it and whispered, no. I didn't ask, but I already knew. He was gone. Blocked her. Deleted the threads. Vanished with everything she thought was real. It took everything I had not to say, good. Now you know what it feels like. Instead, I stood there, watching her realize the weight of what she'd done, not just to me, but to herself. You kept the house, I said quietly, walking over to pick up the boxes. Hope it keeps you warm. She didn't stop me. She didn't follow me to the car. She just sat there, holding those papers, while the porch light flickered above her. This time, I didn't look back. But I wasn't done either. Not even close. I didn't drive straight back to the motel after I left her house. I could have. I had nothing else to pack, nowhere else to be. But I didn't. I pulled over into an old gas station off Route 7, the kind with a flickering open sign that buzzed like a wasp trapped in plastic. I sat there in my truck, the boxes in the back seat barely making a sound. And yet it felt like they were screaming, not from the weight, but from what they represented. The fragments of a man someone else decided was disposable. I watched people come and go. A kid buying Gatorade. A woman in scrubs pumping gas. A guy in a hoodie swiping lottery tickets like they owed him something. The world kept turning. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like it was leaving me behind. I was quiet. I was still. But I was focused. Because even though I had walked away from Lorna's crumbling fantasy, I hadn't left empty-handed. What she didn't know, what no one knew, was that I'd started planting seeds the minute she locked that door behind me. The first thing I'd done, before I called the bank, before I called Dennis, before I even booked the motel, was call my cousin, Hartley. We hadn't spoken in years. Not since the wedding, really. But Hartley wasn't just family, he was an estate attorney. And not the kind who just drafted wills and buried paperwork. Hartley handled messy stuff. Financial sabotage. Fraud. Emergency marital asset freezes. He was the kind of guy you called when someone thought they could outmaneuver you with charm and clean shoes. He took the call without hesitation. Lorna, he asked, flat. What did she do? I gave him the short version. Hartley was silent for maybe 3 seconds. Then he said, let's lock her out of her own illusion. We moved quickly. Our house wasn't just hers, it was ours. And she never removed my name from the deed. Which meant that, while she changed the locks, she had no legal authority to reassign ownership. Not yet, anyway. And that gave us time. Through Hartley, we filed a civil injunction, a petition for financial misconduct under marital law. We included the bank records, the screenshot trail, and the documented wire transfers to Neil/Blake. We weren't accusing her of theft, not directly. No, that would have taken too long to prove, and she would have dragged her feet with lawyers until the year flipped. We went smarter. We accused her of asset mismanagement with malicious intent, which meant the court could place a freeze on shared property and accounts until the dispute was resolved. The freeze went active 48 hours before I stepped into that garage. But here's where it gets better. While Lorna was sipping coffee in the kitchen with Blake and thinking she'd won, she didn't realize the following. Her car lease? In my name. The utilities she never switched over? Frozen. The HOA fee she never paid because she assumed I handled it? Missed 2 cycles. The mortgage auto draft? Reversed under suspicion of fraud. Every rope she thought was keeping her safe was quietly fraying. And that wasn't even the best part. Dennis had set up alerts on Blake's burner accounts. Using metadata, cloud-scraped IP pings, and a few sketchy but legal online tools, we found out where he'd gone. He hadn't vanished, he just moved on. To another city. Another target. He left Lorna in the dust the second he smelled confrontation. And I made sure she knew that indirectly. That night, I mailed her something. Not a threat. Not a letter. Not a final word. Just a photo. It was Blake, laughing, sitting poolside with a woman who wasn't her blonde, maybe mid-20s, holding the same watch Lorna had bought him for his birthday just a week before. I sent it with no return address. No note. Because some messages don't need words. By Tuesday, Hartley forwarded me something unexpected. A message from Lorna's lawyer. Mrs. Renford requests a meeting to discuss a peaceful division of assets. Peaceful. After stealing my savings. After locking me out of my life. After handing everything over to a stranger in exchange for what? Empty promises and wine-soaked lies? No, Lorna. We weren't doing peaceful. We were doing accurate. And I had no interest in meeting halfway when she was the one who shoved me off the cliff. But I wasn't finished yet. Because there was one more person who needed to hear the truth. Someone Lorna never thought would know. And when he found out, everything she built would shatter for good. I didn't expect it to hurt, but it did the moment I decided to call her father. His name is Charles Merton, retired firefighter. Built like an oak tree even in his 60s, and still wore those old leather work boots like he was ready to run into a burning building at any moment. Back when Lorna and I got married, he wasn't just a father-in-law. He was the closest thing I had to a real dad. Mine left when I was 11. Charles didn't try to replace him, but he always showed up. He taught me how to check my truck's suspension properly, how to lay tile, how to fix a leak without making it worse. He gave me a pair of rusted pliers on my wedding day, said, "They're old, but they work, like marriage." Now here I was, 8 years later, about to tell him that his daughter had used those pliers to cut out my lungs. I had debated for days. I wasn't sure if it was fair. I didn't want to destroy what he thought he knew. But in the end, I realized that Lorna had made this choice. Not me. She gambled everything on a man she barely knew, and now that the house of cards was collapsing, she didn't get to keep the lie standing for everyone else. So I called him. He picked up on the second ring. "Wallace," he said, cautious. "I didn't expect to hear from you." "Yeah, I know," I replied. "Do you have 10 minutes? I promise you, this isn't a stunt. This is something you need to know." And I told him. Everything. Not with rage. Not with venom. Just facts. Just truth. I walked him through the timeline. The lockout. The wire transfers. Neil/Blake. The account fraud. The photo I'd sent her. The attorney contact. I even told him about the court freeze. I didn't embellish. I didn't exaggerate. I laid it out with surgical calm. He didn't interrupt. Not once. By the time I was done, the only sound on the other end of the call was the creak of a chair. Finally, he exhaled. Slow. Heavy. "She told us you abandoned her," he said, voice rough. "Said you got mean. That you started drinking too much. That you left without a word. I haven't touched alcohol in 6 years, Charles. I know that." He sounded distant now, like something in him was drifting. "Where is she?" he asked. "Probably at the house. Alone. Blake's gone. Took the money. Cut contact." Another pause. "She told us you cheated," he said, almost to himself. "Said she forgave you, but you got weird afterward. That you changed." "I changed," I whispered, "because I knew something was off. I just didn't know how far it would go." And then, in a voice I didn't expect, gentle, but broken, he said, "She's not who I raised." That one hit me. I could have cried. I didn't, but I could have. Because in that moment, someone finally saw me. not as a jilted husband or a walking cautionary tale, but as a man who'd been stripped of his life by the person who swore to protect it. Charles asked for the documents. I sent them. He didn't respond immediately, but 3 hours later, he called back. She's at our house now, he said. Came here this morning. Crying. Said Blake disappeared and you froze her out of everything. She asked me to co-sign a loan to help her out until things got sorted. And what did you say? I asked. I said, Lorna, I love you, but you're not my daughter right now. And then I handed her the papers you sent. Silence. She didn't argue, he added. Just sat on the porch and cried. I didn't feel satisfaction. Not really. It wasn't a movie moment. There was no musical swell or victory monologue. It just felt like gravity. Real. Heavy. Irrefutable. She's lost everyone now, Charles said. No, I replied. She hasn't lost everyone. She let go of everyone. She made the choice. We just saw it too late. He didn't disagree. When we ended the call, I realized something important, something I hadn't even noticed in the chaos of the past week. I wasn't scared anymore. Not of her. Not of the future. Not of being alone. She had taken so much, but she'd also freed me. Now all that remained was the final step. The quiet one. The one that would make everything official. I stared at the man in the mirror that night, worn, yes, but not broken. Not anymore. Tomorrow, I would file the papers, and the last chain would fall. Filing the divorce papers wasn't dramatic. There was no storm overhead, no flash of lightning as I signed. Just a calm Tuesday morning, a half-empty waiting room, and a quiet legal assistant who slid the papers across the desk without looking me in the eye. I read every word slowly, carefully, like I was reading the final chapter of a book I never wanted to start in the first place. It felt strange, like burying something that had already rotted. I wasn't grieving the end of my marriage. I'd done that already, piece by piece, in that motel room, in that gas station lot, in that garage with the boxes marked Wallace. This wasn't mourning. It was release. When I walked out of the county courthouse, the air felt sharper, brighter. Not because anything around me had changed, but because I had. I went straight to the hardware store after that. I'd been thinking about it for a while, something I used to do before Lorna said it was a waste of money. I bought lumber, sandpaper, varnish, and tools I'd missed the feel of. Then I stopped at a little diner off Route 11. I hadn't eaten there in years, but the waitress still recognized me. You look lighter, she said, not knowing how right she was. I moved out of the motel 2 days later. Found a modest one-bedroom over a quiet bookstore owned by a retired couple who served coffee to regulars and never asked questions. I spent the next few weeks rebuilding furniture from scratch in that apartment. Coffee tables, bookshelves, chairs with imperfections I left untouched on purpose. My hands stopped shaking. My sleep came easier. My mind, once constantly echoing with, why, had gone still. I didn't block Lorna. I didn't have to. After Charles confronted her, she didn't call, didn't write, didn't even show up to contest the filing. The silence was her answer, and I was finally okay with that. But then, something happened. 2 weeks after the paperwork was processed, I found an envelope slipped under my apartment door. No stamp, no return address, just my name and handwriting I knew too well. Inside was a letter. No begging, no pleas, just 3 lines. You were always the better person. I just didn't want to see it. I lost everything chasing nothing. I hope you never look back. I read it once. Then I folded it in half and placed it in a drawer I don't open anymore. Because I did look back, just once, and realized there was nothing left to see. Now, I wake up early. I make coffee with cinnamon like I used to before someone told me it was too strong. I go on long walks. I joined a woodworking group at the local rec center. Last week, I taught a kid how to use a lathe without losing a finger. He called me sir. It made me laugh. And just yesterday, I met someone new. Her name's Eliza. She owns a rescue dog that's missing a leg, says it makes her love him more. We talked for hours, not about pain, not about the past, but about music and ugly furniture and why grilled cheese always tastes better at night. It wasn't magical. It wasn't fireworks. It was real. And real is enough. So, no, this isn't a story about revenge, or destruction, or proving I was better. This is a story about walking away when the door is slammed in your face, and realizing you were never supposed to live in that house forever anyway. Sometimes, the lock changing isn't the end of your life. Sometimes, it's the key to a better one.